you can't tell that they're there. I mean, that they've been hidden purposefully so that the public aren't, you know, upset and annoyed by them. You know, and then they're a bit of a blot on the landscape. So you can live here for years and not know that they exist. But if you were to fly over the Mendips, you'd see huge, big cavities on the map that all represent quarries, disused and used. And we found 3 main quarries. That's West Down Asham, Halcombe, which is the used one, the working one, and Fairy Cave Quarry, which is the most amazing, magical space, which is normally gated and the public aren't allowed in there. I didn't want yet another art trail that's a sort of sculpture trail, because I've been a part of them many times and they're fine, but you know, I wanted to take a step up, a stepping stone to another level, and try something different. And I just think you know, art is more interesting if it's varied, and events like that, or like this, well, I just wanted it to be, you know, multimedia, multi-stranded, have a lot of layers to it. You know, it's got the sort of art, but it's got the science, it's got the nature, you know, so that there's all these different aspects to it, and yes, it sort of deserves to have a foot in different arenas of art. So, you know, poetry is one way of expressing a place and thoughts, and you know, visual arts is another. So it sort of evolved actually on its own, to be completely honest. The artwork's very diverse. We have sound, poetry, taxidermied minuscule creatures, printmaking, painting, sculpture using found materials, land art, collaborative sculpture and music, and they are all sort of installed so that they play off each other. There's a kind of strong resonance between some of the work and a contrast, so visitors will, you know, encounter different experiences and different senses as they walk through the trail. Somerset Earth Science Centre is situated right next to Moons Hill Quarry, which is one of the few quarries in the country that produces basalt for roadstone, and it's Somerset Earth Science Centre is supported by all the quarries in the area in a sort of an attempt to educate the public about quarries in a good way, raise the profile, and their main role is to sort of, you know, teach people about geology and the quarries, obviously, and they have this beautiful lake next to a very wonderful sort of modern sustainable building, which is, again, it's stunning. It's you know, very sort of well designed, and we've installed work on the lake and around the lake in the woodland. So they've got this little woodland walk. It's quite a sort of handleable size. So that's Somerset Earth Science Centre is our part of our first step. So it sort of carries on throughout all the other steps of the project. And that's where we've been running our workshops and our artist talks mainly, although we've got a couple of Black Swan arts.
My first job was as a photography teacher, or my only job. For 16 years I'd set up a department. And then when I left, it sort of got ingrained into me, into my bones, into my way of looking. And always, I have done some digital, but always tended to use film. And then when I left teaching, I did an MA in photography on the land at Plymouth with Jem Southam. And I heavily got into large format and medium format photography, but mainly large format. I just love the time it takes. I like to consider what I'm doing. And also, I really like the fact that I'm doing my locality. This is my local. And it's, you know, the landscape where I live in, and I like to breathe it and record it how I see it and how I think about it. And industrial, that sort of post-industrial landscape, I find, even though you're out in the most beautiful countryside, it wasn't always green, pleasant land here. It was, you know, where we live in Priddy, it was all lead mines and dark, and I just love this history, and the thinking about the history of it, and these quarries. Since I've been photographing quarries for over 2 years now, I think it's the space. It's like a cathedral. You go into this space and it's vast and it's completely man-made, except the fact that the rocks are, you know, it's Mother Earth, isn't it? It's the geological history, the evolution of our landscape and how it was made, and you can read it like a book, and that's why I'm fascinated by it.
West Down is quite ambiguous. It's got a menacing feel to it. When you sort of arrive there, you kind of feel a bit lost. You're not quite sure which way to turn. There are, you know, 2 or 3 choices. There's the obvious public pathway which goes down the middle, but it's very, very long. And yeah, there's as you go through the middle of it, the public path, and it's quite sort of just a lovely walk with a river flowing on one side. But when you enter the sort of central zone, which is the crossroads, we call it, there's a sort of kind of apocalyptic feeling of it's a sort of post-industrial landscape that is quite disquieting. And I don't think I'd like to be there on my own at night. There's a wonderful iconic building structure that still remains called the Toast Rack, and it's where they segregated all the gravel into different sizes, and there's sort of, you know, remnants of machinery dotted around, and you know, walls have been graffitied a bit, but in a good way, and it's got this real kind of abandoned feeling, but quite wild and overgrown with silver birch and ash and hazel. And in winter, it has a sort of spectacular show of moss on the ground, which sort of is really bright in the rain. Against the purple buddleia. It's extraordinary, and it's used for all sorts of reasons. That's I find West Down quite. It's got a sense of sort of underground activity. There's, you know, well, people have raves there, but also people go horse riding, people go dog walking, families go for, you know, little days out, and yeah, it's regularly visited by just a whole range of people.
Stepping Stone, it's just it's a sweet connection, because I live in a village where one of the quarries is situated, and in fact they spread out all around me. But then I've gravitated here because this is my patch. You know, this is where I go and collect stone. I grew up in the Mendips, and although I worked in sort of Crete and developed my process over there, I came back here because I knew this is where I could find my source material. So it's no accident that I'll be involved in something like this, but that it's come into being is just works a dream. Yeah. I make sculpture from found stone, from limestone, pieces that are just coming to the surface. They've detached from the bedrock, and as they rise to the surface they erode, and you get these sort of flowing forms, these sort of curvy shapes. Sometimes you get sort of eye holes or belly buttons, and sort of cheekbones. It can be fleshy or bony, and I kind of piece together sculptures as though I'm sort of restoring an antique sculpture that's been smashed to the four corners of the earth, and I pick pieces and play a sort of a big jigsaw game, putting pieces together, just trying to resolve the sort of the flow and the feeling that the connections make. So it's a sort of game of stones where you're puzzling, but it also I find it really expressive. So I'm not just putting arms and legs on figures. I'm telling stories, and at least that's what I'm doing in my head.
So I have the 3 P's in my work philosophy: passion, protection and preservation of the environment. So I think with the environment that I'm working in, with what the materials that I'm working with, it all links in really well. And as I said, giving something new life. The piece of stone has been quarried in a nearby quarry, brought back into this quarry, and then giving it new life by covering it with something very natural and putting it back in a natural environment, and see how it relates to where it is and what people think about it, whether it's a good talking point or not.
This is a very old traditional wet felting process, yeah. In my work I tend to use a mix of very traditional things and try and use some new techniques as well. But I wanted to, for this project particularly, go back to how wet felting would have been, to bring in the heritage of the wool industry. With the quarries, you've got both disused and working quarries still going at the moment, and with the wool trade, it's still flourishing in the area, and the piece here actually is literally trying to tie in the two heritages together. So these are all little piece of rusted implements that I've found left in the quarries when I've walked around, and then I've joined them together with cords of wool. So it's, as I say, literally the two heritages hanging together, really, and I feel that's really important.
Quite a small sort of hole in the ground with, obviously great big massive machinery going all day long, and you have this peripheral grass walkway that goes around the sort of outside of it, people can, it's a public pathway, so people can look down into the quarry, see the quarry at work, but then have this very peaceful walk around the edge. So it's a very interesting contrast between a sort of very countrified walk and an industrial scene below going on.
I'm scratching. What am I doing? I'm trying to make that into this, and at the moment I've got a resist on here from the acid, and I'm scratching into it. So when I put this into the acid, it will etch. So what you can't really see here, these lines will come up quite dark. I'm just creating texture. Well, it's from this composite picture over here, which is of West Down Quarry, and actually it's a Google Earth map which I've blown up so it's become fuzzy, which I quite like, and made black and white, and I'm using that. So each one of these is twice the size, twice in both dimensions like that, and I'm making 10 of these. There's 10 plates, and they're all going to be assembled together. I'm making separate ones because it's much easier to do the etching of them, and also I quite like the grid feeling of it. And they're going to be laid out in the quarry on the ground, actually on pallets, and then people can come along and make rubbings of them or stand on them or whatever they want to do with them. But it will be a map right at the centre. The centre of the quarry is there, and I've made that the centre of this, so that's where all the stones are and where a lot of things are happening for this project. It seems to me that possibly this already existed in the earth, this beautiful formation, which, I don't know, it's just, I can't get over how lovely it is actually. It's just so alive. And with a quarry you think, oh, it's stone and it's been, you know, plundered and it's dead, but it's not. It's an extremely alive place, and that's, I think everyone in the project has felt that actually, you know, with what grows there and so on. But this is just the bones of it, isn't it?
I keep thinking I keep wanting to call it a natural amphitheatre, but of course it's entirely artificial amphitheatre. If it was natural at the moment, I'd be some 60 or 70 feet underground. There are some commissions, some projects you do, you walk into a space and think, I know exactly what I want to do here. Not to say that the ideas hadn't been swirling around for some time before that. I do a lot of GPS triggered soundscape work for the smartphone, so I'm always alert to the acoustic properties and the physicality of sound, which as a poet I suppose I am as well. My poetry is for the voice, it's for the live voice, so it is about sound and structure and quality, genius loci of the space, yes. I'm writing a script on the quarry, on stone, on the particular history of this quarry, about strange things, like mines are really strange things. You sort of look at the strata and you think of strata of history, you think of strata of words. And they're very monumental and have a sort of strange beauty. And the floor of this place reminds me of the Serengeti or something. I've never been to the Serengeti. I haven't actually been to the Serengeti. I've been to South Africa. But it's a sort of almost a desert-like, has almost desert-like quality. You expect to see antelopes or cheetahs running around. So it has a very special. And then you go up on top. And if you go up on top, it's as if you're sort of wandering along. And I think Martin said there was a footpath which starts which used to start over there before they dug the quarry, and which continues over the other side. So that sort of image of a disruption of life, a disruption of the earth, a discontinuity, a discontinuity, all very interesting ideas. And the geology as well. So the work will be about geology, it'll be about history, it'll be about associations with big holes in the ground, rocks, different types of rocks. So I think I'll bring my brother-in-law here, who's a geologist. I'll make use of all my family connections, bring him here and have him explain the geology to me.
But horses they did not ride, rather scaly beasts, whip-lashed, nail-hard, caricatured of great crested newts, horse large. These had been nurtured in underground stables by arrested nymphs, cordoned like sweet sour apples, till they had worked off their minimum wage 0 hours contracts under a conservative government. Aye, tears their soul nutrient fluted stalactites their merciful organ. They pranged their kites against the insufferable jaws of merry hell till wasted light exit froze their flesh and they were oxidized forever.
I always feel quite comfortable when I go into Fairy Cave Quarry. It's not menacing, because West Down does have a sort of menacing quality, and I think it actually it glistens whether it's in sunlight or rain. It's got amazing echoes and puddles. It has a lot of puddles and sort of little mini lakes that, you know, lots of bulrushes are growing in it. So it's sort of quite lush in parts. And yeah, it's quite magical. It's not just the fact that it's called Fairy Cave Quarry, but I think that helps. There is a sense of something kind of mysterious as you go in there.
My work is an ongoing kind of narrative, and the protagonists are evil skeleton fairies who have existed for about 15 years and they're kind of ever evolving, and the work I make explores their behaviour and their worlds and their ambitions. So here it's really interesting to be making work for a space outside, which I haven't done for years and years. I did it at the beginning when the fairies were much bigger. I did a residence in the forest. But the quarry itself, the space, it just feels really magical and quite odd. And especially having to climb over boulders to get into it, it feels a bit naughty and kind of secret. And then you're kind of in this amphitheatre and you feel like you're being watched by the birds, and you don't know, there's, you know, all sorts of things lurking, and I kind of like the idea of being able to explore the rock, the kind of the substance of the quarry, so the fossils and this kind of these historical fragments of nature, and combine that with myths of fairies where they were believed to once inhabit underground places and fairy mounds, and kind of kidnap people and take them into the mounds, and there's quite a few mounds here. It feels like a really great playground as well. Kind of imagine brilliant adventures here. Well, I haven't really explored fossils before. So fossilised remains of animals, and I'd like to bring those into the narrative, those kind of the reawakening of creatures that once were and are no more. Could perhaps be mythical, a bit like the fairies. But mostly I think it's about thinking about being underground. The fairies are coming!
I like my work to be quite playful, not be too serious. You know, life's quite playful. I mean, I'm just, yes, yeah. Also for people all ages to sort of just open their eyes and feel a sense of wonder about the spaces that they've walked into and life, you know, just life past, present, future really. Just everything about the quarries to me represents our origins, you know, distant past and future, you know, where are we, what our sort of impact on our surroundings is quite important, but how insignificant we are as well. So, yes, quite playful. I'm making a whole load of tentacles at the moment, which are linked to my interest in crinoids, which are sea lilies. I've been a bit obsessed with the fact that these quarries take us back to a time, you know, an incredibly long ago, 350 million years ago, when, you know, the seabed that's now vertical was obviously horizontal, and the only things existing in that time were sort of primitive reptiles and these sea creatures, which were mainly crinoids and sort of coral forms like Rugo's corals. And in that time the crinoids were sort of really plentiful. There were about, hundreds of thousands of varieties of them. And now they still exist, but not quite so many varieties. So they've just sparked my interest. They're incredible creatures. They kind of drag themselves along the seabed, you know, with these kind of long tentacle arms. Anyway, so I've got this thing about tentacles being a sort of symbol of you know, this life, this time, that world, and also how, you know, forms tend to echo each other throughout life. You know, there's all sorts of different species which have similarities. It's a sort of a kind of slightly like convergent evolution. So yeah, I'm making, I hope, about 100 tentacles which are going to form these pieces which are sort of a mixture of kind of look a little bit like neurones, but also crinoids and tumbleweeds, actually, because the quarries are these big kind of arid spaces that are kind of like another world, and I think a tumbleweedy form just will look quite surreal in that space.